Welcome back. We're counting down the minutes to the arrival of Russian President Vladimir Putin to India for the 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit. He will be meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi very shortly after his arrival, and they'll be having a dinner as well, a private dinner. The official engagements really begin tomorrow, Ramesh.
That's right. Meanwhile, India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, along with his Russian counterpart Andrei Belousov, co-chair the 22nd India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission on Military and Military Technical Cooperation in New Delhi on Thursday. Meeting in the capital, the Commission reviewed ongoing joint projects, explored new avenues of defence collaboration and discussed ways to enhance military interoperability.
एपेक्स लेवल पर हमारे माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी और रशिया के प्रेसिडेंट हिज एक्सेलेंसी मिस्टर व्लादिमीर पुतिन के बीच नियमित रूप से बातचीत होती रही है और हमारे दोनों लीडर्स ने जून 2025 में चीन में शंघाई कोऑपरेशन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन समिट के दौरान बहुत क्लोज इंटरेक्शन की थी। इकोनॉमिक साइड पर हम पिछले महीने मॉस्को में हुए इंडिया रशिया वर्किंग ग्रुप ऑन ट्रेड एंड इकोनॉमिक कोऑपरेशन की 26th मीटिंग के सफल आयोजन का स्वागत करते हैं और हम रशिया लेड यूरेशियन इकोनॉमिक यूनियन के साथ फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट के लिए बातचीत शुरू होने का भी स्वागत करते हैं। 23rd इंडिया रशिया एनुअल लीडर्स समिति दोनों देशों के बीच स्पेशल और प्रिविलेज पार्टनरशिप को और मजबूत करेगी, ऐसा मेरा विश्वास है।
Our bilateral relations have a strategic character, and the partnership with India is a key factor for the balance in South Asian region and the global security in general. Russia cooperates in full scale with India in formation of the new outlook of the Army, Air Force and the Navy.
And earlier in the day, the two leaders laid a wreath at the National War Memorial in New Delhi, paying tribute to India's fallen soldiers. The ceremony underscored the shared respect and long-standing military ties between India and Russia ahead of the scheduled high-level defense discussions in the capital.
The Russian Defence Minister was also accorded a ceremonial Guard of Honour by the Indian Armed Forces, the tri-services, marking a display of military tradition and strengthening bilateral defence ties.
All right, so we're back tracking the latest in terms of the arrival of President Putin to Delhi for the 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit. We're joined by Manjeev Singh Puri, our expert guest on the subject of the day. And of course, we also have Professor Sachdeva with us and my colleague Shubhendu Ghosh as well as Amritpal Singh. Amrit, if I could ask you, we're talking about how the build-up has been to this visit and how usual, regular or irregular, unusual is it for a leader to be coming in for a state visit, but his key figures from the government already in the country that he'd be visiting and engaging with their counterparts, which we just saw.
Gautam, that signifies the importance of this visit, given the fact that President Putin very important ones. The Defence Minister, the Agriculture Minister, the Energy Minister, the Economic Development Minister, who will be participating also in the Business Forum, where the two principals shall also be present, the Governor of the Central Bank of Russia, the Interior Minister of Russia. So very important part of his cabinet coming. Also traveling with him a huge posse of business tycoons. So that signifies how important this visit is. It's important from the point of view of two aspects. One, renewed importance to each other, building on a relationship which picked up during once.
Right, we'll try to fix that line with Amrit Pal in just a bit. Amrit, do stay on. We'll fix that audio link with you in just a bit. In the meantime, let me go across to my colleague Shubhendu Ghosh, who is standing by. Shubhendu, we've just seen the two defense ministers engage in talks in the lead up to the much anticipated Putin-Modi summit in New Delhi. Talking about defense, what are you picking up from your sources in terms of the key likely outcomes on the talks on defense in particular? There's talk about the India getting more of the S-400s, the air defense system from Russia, missiles, possibly a submarine deal as well, including a military logistics pact, we are told.
That's right, Ramesh. Those are the points that are, in fact, being highlighted from both sides. We know that defense ties traditionally have been the mainstay of the partnership between India and Russia. In the recent years, energy, oil and petroleum products in particular have taken center stage. But over the years, India has also tried to diversify the larger policy of all aligned and strategic autonomy meant that we have more defense partners from across the world. So in such a changing time, it would be very interesting to see the manner in which both Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Vladimir Putin are able to consolidate and present a roadmap for the future of the defense ties between India and Russia. Some of the systems that you mentioned have been in limelight, in particular S-400. Operation Sindoor that India took up earlier this year. In that S-400, which is a missile defense system, a very advanced missile defense system, played a key role in that operation. So in that sense, India, while it is also ramping up its own defense production, is now looking for, in fact, wants to consolidate with countries that it can partner with as far as co-production is concerned, from a buyer-seller defense relationship that has evolved. The India-Russia defense ties has evolved to a more joint production based relationship. BrahMos missiles have been in focus. India and Russia technology, manpower coming together to produce such an advanced weapon system has implications not only for the defense ecosystem of the country, but also significantly for their own export potential coming forward. India is also gaining momentum as far as becoming an important defense exporter is concerned. And in that context, partnership with Russia becomes hugely significant. Ramesh?
Well, yes, certainly. And if I could again come to you, in fact, introduce Manjeev Singh Puri to this discussion. He's been India's ambassador in Nepal, Luxembourg, Belgium, as well as the European Union. Extensive period of time to have seen the relationship between India and Russia also evolve through the Soviet era and then to what it is today. Welcome to this broadcast, Mr. Puri. What do you make of how things have been set up really for this visit? The kind of expectations, they are huge in terms of how trade can not only be balanced but also enhanced because of the way things have gone in recent years with increasing oil imports from Russia, but also how to ensure that this momentum keeps going, keeps making progress.
Thank you very much, Gautam. Just to add to what you said, I was also very fortunate to be part of the Operation Sindoor diplomatic outreach, and the delegation on which I was went to Moscow. So I just want to let our viewers know right from the beginning that, you know, this is not only an enduring relationship, but this is a relationship which has been important to us at times when we really want it. So let's not just talk of the United Nations. You mentioned the S-400s, absolutely critical when Operation Sindoor happened. Now, coming to the visit, Gautam, if I may say something which is a little different, but perhaps makes the point really big. Let's understand that this is a meeting of leaders of two of the world's most significant countries. India is today the world's largest country, the fifth largest economy, becoming the fourth largest economy very soon by the end of the year. Russians are by far the largest landmass permanent member of the Security Council, nuclear power, and deterrent nuclear power, and a massive player on the global stage. And so, therefore, not only in the past, but in terms of the topsy-turvy geopolitics of today, this visit assumes a lot of significance. Let's remember, annual summits have been the order of the day. Prime Minister Modi went to Moscow, where he was received by President Putin. I think these scenes from that visit are being displayed on on the television right now. They then met at the SCO summit. So I think for every reason there is signaling, and there will be substantive outcomes on the bilateral front. But I also believe in terms of understanding global geopolitics. Some of it has direct bearings to us, let me say, including the India-Pakistan business, the Russia-Pakistan angle on that, Russia-China, India and China, the facts of what the Russians are doing with the United States on Ukraine. All of this has a material impact as far as we are concerned, our understanding of the thing. And of course, issues which are bilateral, trade without any doubt. The last few years have seen a massive spike in India-Russia trade because we were buying oil from them. And that's becoming increasingly difficult because the players in the sector, whether it's the public sector companies or the others, their abilities to be able to refine that oil, export it further to other countries is becoming difficult. There are financial issues. But let's see, I am sure, there is a good understanding, a good chemistry, but we need to add even more muscle to this relationship. The relationship, let me say, adds to our interest in multi-alignment. But let me also say this, India and where we are adds also to Russia and it showing to the world its great global acceptance, especially in the context of the West saying all sorts of things, Mr. Trump and the current US administration notwithstanding.
Professor Sachdev, coming to you now, if we zoom out and look at the regional and global implications of an India-Russia partnership in third countries in particular, I can immediately name Ukraine, for instance, Iran and possibly Afghanistan. Ukraine obviously because of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, which is, we are told, approaching the end game, as it were. Iran because it's important regionally. India's invested in the Chabahar port, and that could enhance connectivity, especially in the INSTC, the corridor that we spoke about. And Afghanistan because Russia is the only country so far to have officially recognized the Taliban, and India is also moving in that direction. So do you see the possibility or scope for India and Russia to do more in third countries, be it Ukraine or Iran or even Afghanistan?
Well, you're right. This is not an ordinary visit, I must say, because this is, yes, it's very important, but the way I think this visit is being watched globally, it has a much bigger significance than just what, a couple of bilateral issues which will be discussed, with the trade or other issues. One, he's coming to India at a time when, as you mentioned, endgame, the kind of discussions which are happening about Ukraine between Americans and Russians, and the way the kind of reactions you have within the European capitals. Similarly, the base of our relationship, you look at, this is basically defense. Despite our diversification, this is very crucial for India, not just for our own security, but also for India's defense production and defense exports. Second, about energy, and both fossil and also nuclear. This has now a new dimension this has given to India-Russia relations. So for India, the two major areas where we have very significant economic and strategic interests. One, you have in Indo-Pacific, in which for the last many years that has been, the kind of dominant theme of India's foreign policy, where we thought that, we would be working very closely with the United States and the Western partners in the context of a rising and assertive China. But on the continental side, we also have very serious interest, as you mentioned, in Afghanistan, in Central Asia, and going up to Europe. I mean, this whole area, there are political and strategic issues where we really converge on many of those issues with Russia. And there are also connectivity and economic issues as well. So how do we really navigate? And in this continental sphere, I think the India-Russia partnership is very, very crucial for India. The way I think the Chinese dominance you can see in the trade matters, in the investment matters, in infrastructure, in this Eurasian landmass. And if India and Russia is also worried about that as well, because some of the space which actually was vacated by Russia in Central Asia and other that has been overtaken by Chinese. Of course, China and Russia, they are working very closely. So at the moment, because the way the geopolitical situation in which Russia has been cornered, but things may change radically. I mean, if we have in the next few weeks or few months some kind of settlement happening for Ukraine, and the Russia then will come back as a major strategic player in Eurasia and also in the European European security area, and similarly could also, a lot of economic opportunities which even Americans, were visualizing working with Russia. It's a huge country with huge resources, and then many of, as I was mentioning, of all the connectivity projects we have been talking. So all those things could also can become, already you can see even the north-south trade corridor, Russia and Iran sector is working quite all right. We have to make it further, linking it with India. But only problem for India has been at this point of time, both Russia and Iran are under sanctions. But things may change. And these are long-term things we are talking about. And India-Russia partnership is not really just about today and tomorrow. This is a long-term trust which has been built by the leaders or generations of leaders in both the countries, and Russia will continue to be a very important player. They are the member of the UNSC. They have all the major weapons with them, industry, resources, and many of the technologies also. So if we can work together, there are many things which India can do, and this is also give a very kind of important signal to the world that and in the next after just few weeks, India will have the BRICS presidency, and then this within the BRICS also, for the success of BRICS, India's presidency, Russia's role again is going to be very, very crucial, and many of the things actually we have been working together. Now, as I said, you have the defense and energy sector, which is the base. Now, how do we really use this base for our linkages in the private sector, and also later on, people-to-people linkages and the technology linkages? This is the kind of roadmap I think we really need to work very, very carefully, notwithstanding the fact that today there are difficulties are serious, but those difficulties may not be there forever. So there are so many opportunities which may come up, and the kind of trust which has been again further strengthened in the last 2-3 years, you can see between India and Russia, because the kind of position India has taken, neutral position India has taken in the Ukraine war, and one thing stabilized, and India also has to play perhaps a very important role, because the Ukraine is also a friendly country. So even the post, I would say, any kind of settlement, you also have to have the reconstruction in Ukraine. And in that reconstruction, not only the development sector, even the private sector can also really get reasonable, I would say, opportunities there as well. And you mentioned about Iran and Afghanistan. Now, our interest in Afghanistan, as we have seen our engagement now with Taliban, so it means it will continue to be a very important area for India. And the Russians already, this is the only country, as you rightly mentioned, which has recognized the Taliban regime. We are also working. In fact, everybody else is also working with them at the moment, because ultimately you do not want this space to be used by the forces which are not friendly to you. So there are many areas in which I think, but those are the broader areas in which we have been working for many, many years, together. But the kind of, the roadmap which really we need now in the changed situation, despite difficult conditions, and also signaling to the world. I mean, that yes, we have developed our partnership with the United States, with Europe, but this particular relationship is very, very special to India. And this is what, in fact, when Dr. Jaishankar, when he was in his book, he mentioned that, that this relationship has been noticed by the world, not because things have changed, because things have not changed, because the world has changed, the politics and foreign policy within India has changed. There are so many changes which has taken place in Russia itself, but still this relationship has continued to survive. And this is what I think the message the world is now listening. I know within India, I think it was still, I think was known to all political parties within the civil society, the kind of linkages we had with Russia, that this is a very special relationship. But in the last 3-4 years, I think the whole world has also come to know that this particular relationship is a kind of a model for many other countries also. In this kind of when the things are changing so fast, things are so unstable, and still you can really continue to work on your partners on many issues.
And Ambassador Puri, on the basis question of working in third countries, also brought up this question as to working with third countries, potent partners. We've seen ties between India and China improving in recent months, although there's still a lot of ground to cover, a lot of things still left to iron out. But the talk of the town when it happened was what happened in Tianjin, when the SCO heads of state meeting was held, and all the three leaders of Russia, India and China came together and had a good laugh together. It was tremendous fodder for all cameras. But to take this beyond the optics into action, do you think something could be explored in Delhi this time around when President Putin is visiting?
Gautam, thank you. And thank you for pointing out this particular fact and the optics. Now, one of the things I believe we in India, all those who are sort of stakeholders in this, should underplay this fact that this was a blowback from what happened vis-a-vis the United States, etc. Let's understand, India is a major player in its own right. We stand for things which are in our national interest, for multi-alignment. And so, therefore, relations with the United States are important. We seek to build them, progress them further, etc. But we also simultaneously seek good relations, including in our neighborhood, where we know we have problems, but with other major stakeholders in the world, and Russia is certainly one of them. And so, therefore, what you saw there in Tianjin, after all, the SCO is a thing on which we have been members. The Russians and the Chinese may have started it, but India has been a member there. But the point to note was that in some senses, the entire world focused on the fact that India was present there. And of course, there was that aspect. But I am glad that this visit is now taking place here in Delhi, and the world is seeing that, it's not just that. It's a huge, massive relationship. A relationship in which there is mutuality of interest. Professor Sachdeva very correctly mentioned the areas of defense, there's nuclear cooperation. I want to leave a few geopolitical ideas here. He mentioned BRICS, very important. We will hold the presidency. Now, of course, the Russians are unlikely to, sort of rock any of our sort of sensitivities in the context of the BRICS summit. During the G20, via media was found at that stage in terms of Ukraine. But, it's also important for us to engage them, apart from the bilateral angles, on the issue of being clear with them in terms of India and China and what does that mean, and the role that we expect the Russians to play, a role which in a sense is far from a lean towards China, which ensures that there is not a lean in that direction. Secondly, in the context of Sindoor and otherwise also for some time, people have noticed a growing sort of build-up of relations with the Pakistanis. Now, we must understand that some of it is absolutely natural. After all, Pakistan is in that part of the world where the Russians believe they have a natural hegemony. The parts of Central Asia are betting that side. But having said all this, it's important that we talk to them. What exactly does this mean? And make clear to them the overriding aspect of the massive India-Russia collaboration, which incidentally is not just a question of being good for India, but is good for Russia. And Gautam, you don't mind my saying something again, maybe with a little bit of humor. It was mentioned here that such a large visit, so many leaders, this, that, and the other. Look, do you really think that in the context of the world, especially in the last 2-3 years, but leaving aside since President Trump has come in power, President Putin could really visit many countries and pay a state visit there? So, there is a certain importance to India too. I'm not, of course, saying this to in any way diminish the massive importance of Russia to India. And on the defense side, I see lots of potential and possibilities. We have to find ways and means of continuing this cooperation, because this is a cooperation which is not just time tested, it's ground tested. And that's particularly important and known to those people who are on the ground. Nuclear cooperation, nobody talks about it, but look, come on. We are a country which has taken on net zero targets. We want to work in that direction. But at the same time, we want to maintain our carbon space for our developmental needs. Now, at the last COP of the UN FCCC in Belem, what did people say? That India, China, Russia, all the BRICS and everyone was together to say, yes, we must do what needs to be done on fossil fuels, but their need and imperative for the moment is something which is important, and therefore that space also had to be safeguarded. Again, areas of cooperation which don't readily come to mind, but energy in a broader context, including resilience and sustainability, is also important.
Ambassador Puri, Professor Sachdev, do stay on. Let me bring in my colleague Amrit Pal Singh, who is standing by. Amrit, any word yet on President Putin's arrival?
Hello, hi.
Amrit, are you with us? Can you hear me? Right, we'll try to fix that link with Amrit in just a bit, but we're given to understand that President Putin's plane is expected to land any moment now. The expected time of his arrival was 6:35 p.m. India time, so we are moments away from his arrival in New Delhi for the much anticipated India-Russia 23rd Annual Summit.
Yes, certainly, and we are building up to that moment when his plane lands in the national capital, and pretty soon that will be something that we'll be breaking on our screens as well. Shubhendu, if I could come to you, just remind us of the kind of schedule that President Putin has here. Today is not a very busy day, but the meat of the state visit unfolds tomorrow, I believe.
That's right, Gautam. We are in fact on standby. Any moment now, President Vladimir Putin's plane could land in the national capital, New Delhi, and thus will begin the two-day state visit that we have been talking about. Yes, today is the day of his arrival. He is expected to also meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Tomorrow is the day of action. It would begin with, of course, him paying respects at Rajghat. Also, a ceremonial welcome is scheduled not very far from where I am. I'm at the India Gate at the forecourts of Rashtrapati Bhavan. President Draupadi Murmu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi would receive the visiting dignitary. Thereafter, the leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, will engage in the India-Russia annual summit, and we've seen the different kind of engagements associated with that, defense and economy in particular. There is a business economy summit that is taking place already. It started today, which Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal also addressed. So we see important engagements have already begun, and once the leaders take center stage, by then it is expected that the representatives of both sides, especially in trade and economy, in defense, would have ironed out for the leaders to make some big announcements. There's also a special banquet in honor of President Putin that would be organized by President Draupadi Murmu's office. That happens tomorrow. So tomorrow's a big day, but today all eyes on the arrival of a Russian president in New Delhi in just a short bit from now. Gautam?
And talking about the two leaders themselves, Shubhendu, Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, now we know that they enjoy a very close personal relationship, a good rapport between the two leaders. You think their personal chemistry will hold in good stead going forward to keep the India-Russia relations on an even keel, even the day after, as it were?
Ramesh, can I say something, please?
Sure, Ambassador Puri. Sure.
Ramesh, this is a lovely segue.
Shubhendu, just hold your thoughts. Shubhendu will come to you in just a bit. Ambassador Puri wants to come in. Ambassador Puri.
Yeah. Thank you, Ramesh. What a lovely segue. Shubhendu mentioned, or Gautam mentioned, that the meat of the visit is tomorrow. Yes, the procedural meat is tomorrow, but the real meat is tonight. When the two leaders will meet by themselves. Remember, chemistries matter. These are two important and strong leaders of their countries. Chemistry matters, and explaining some of these issues, which are truly understanding issues, and understanding both the abilities as well as the restrictions that each other faces in doing them. These are particularly important. The rest of it, I'm not underplaying any of that. That will happen. But in various senses, believe me, if you could, it would have been great to have a camera inside. But this is the evening to watch, because the mood and the outcomes, the procedural ones are there. The mood will get set from tonight. And in fact, this is the evening, which was the critical one. Thanks.
Indeed. Shubhendu, would you like to comment on that, the personal chemistry between the two leaders?
Absolutely, and just to sort of really second Ambassador Puri's point, tonight the foundation would be laid for the developments that we will see play out in the public gaze tomorrow in the summit. Yes, the rapport, the personal rapport, the camaraderie between the two leaders is going to be one of the important focus areas during this state visit of Russian President Vladimir Putin. In the thick of the conflict, how many leaders could in fact sit across the table and tell President Putin that this is not an era of war? And when Prime Minister Modi said that, he also presented India's standpoint, with Russia at different points in time has appreciated and said that it appreciates India's stand and push for peace in the conflict, which is complex. So in that sense, the friendship between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Putin is going to be absolutely critical in really in solidifying some of the aspirational aspects that we have been talking about in the past couple of hours in diverse areas of engagement. This birthday of Prime Minister Modi in September this year, there was a special message by President Vladimir Putin where he acknowledged leadership of Prime Minister Modi and the role that he has played in sort of steering the development journey, not just of India, but also shaping in many ways global geopolitics. So here are two leaders who share the sort of common worldview, who share a legacy of friendship between the nations and opportunities that lie ahead for both the countries.
Indeed. Shubhendu, stay on while we are waiting for the first visuals of the arrival of the Russian leader in New Delhi for the 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit. Professor Sajdev, coming to you now, talking about the famed personal chemistry between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin. A European perspective on this chemistry, as it were, is that, and many of the leaders believe, that Prime Minister Modi is one leader who can speak to President Putin. President Putin listens to Prime Minister Modi, and therefore the Europeans believe that India should lean on Russia on the Ukraine conflict and push Russia towards an amicable settlement. Do you think India has a fair submission to make? One, and two, can India play a role in that?
Well, I think, this is one issue where I think we should not unnecessarily exaggerate India-Russia relations. Because, yes, I mean, there is a possibility, I'm sure, as Ambassador Puri mentioned, that today, what happens tomorrow, those agreements or speeches have already been written, already things are done. Now, only thing is that how the discussion today between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, they will kind of lay out the kind of future direction of India-Russia relations, how we really need to move forward. And secondly, they would also try to understand each other's view on particularly from Indian perspective, what happens in Ukraine and what kind of direction perhaps BRICS, perhaps India's presidency would like to take. Now, as far as the Ukraine is concerned, even the Europeans, I mean, despite the fact that Europe is the place where war is taking place, Europeans are directly involved. But in those talks, even the Europeans are sidelines totally at the moment. So this is happening directly between United States and Russia and the countries which matter at the moment. And India, of course, would be very happy, would be saying that, as you mentioned, people keep mentioning, as Prime Minister mentioned earlier in Samarkand, that it is not an era of war. So we obviously would be happy any kind of positive development towards peace in Ukraine. But how the nitty-gritty of those things will happen, I think they are big players. They are the one who are already dealing with each other. We can only give good wishes that, these things come to an end. But there are certain other issues, where I think India need to give direction to BRICS presidency. I think that some of those issues could be discussed perhaps between, President Putin and Prime Minister Modi. As you can see, the last BRICS presidency was very much Middle East centric and also energy centric. A large amount of energy transactions are taking place between BRICS countries, between Russia and China, between India, Russia. Iran is selling a lot of oil to China. We have stopped buying at the moment because of sanctions. And UAE, Saudis, all of them are big players. And many of these transactions already taking place, like between India and Russia, between China and Russia, in BRICS currencies. We do not know how much we are really paying to Russia, because these are the things, it's not easy to kind of, give full details because of the sanctions, because of so many issues. But, the large amount of this is also being, transactions are taking place in BRICS currencies, whether UAE currency, Chinese currency, or Indian currency and other. So can we, Russians, when under their presidency of the BRICS, they were talking about BRICS currency. They were quite, aggressive about this. And, similarly, President Trump has been quite, he has given that, he'll put tariffs, etc., on all those issues. So this is one issue, we may not, officially we have very clearly mentioned that this is not the area in which India would like to be, pushing because of the various reasons. But, one thing still, there is a possibility, at least for one or two commodities, particularly like oil and gas, there could be some, mechanism BRICS could work out to deal those transactions in BRICS currencies, in some kind of multilateral kind of framework. Now what we are doing, it's already happening. Now we are doing bilaterally, what India does with Russia, or what China does with Russia, or Iran is doing with
Professor,
China.
are you therefore suggesting the choice is between rupee-ruble trade versus de-dollarization, as it were?
No, I'm not saying de-dollarization
Okay.
or rupee ruble something, but because all these countries are doing certain transactions in
Right.
bilateral currencies.
Right.
Now for China, it's relatively easy because they also have a lot of exports. So they can buy oil from Iran and from Russia, and they can also sell a lot of their own products to these countries. But for India at the moment, we have a lot of imports
True.
in energy, but still our exports will take time to catch that level. So we are now paying in different currencies, perhaps in Indian rupees, some of them could be in the, the UAE dirham, some of them even could be with the Chinese currency as well. But, there is interest among all of them that can we work out certain mechanism to deal with at least transactions in energy, some kind of BRICS mechanism. And these are early days.
Sure.
But India, if India feels that it's useful, we can give certain direction. Russians would be, of course, very happy to push any of these kind of, in this direction, because they are really the one who are under sanction. They want some kind of alternative mechanism, and energy is one of their major, source of exports and earnings.
True.
So they would be happy, and I think the others are also quite alarmed. Iranians, of course, are under sanctions. It could happen with others as well. And if it's at least with 10, 11 countries, if you can work out certain mechanism within BRICS, even just for energy products, that give a new direction to the whole transactions which are taking place. And many other countries in the global south could also perhaps start using, if that mechanism to be a successful mechanism. So I think these are the kind of discussions which perhaps might be happening at the highest level, which may not come immediately in open. But, those are the things which will really give direction to India-Russia relations and India's BRICS presidency and how do the alternatives to the existing global structures will be built in the years to come. Of course, we do have a bilateral summit tomorrow. There would be declaration, there would be some agreements, and there would be people talk about defense and whether S-500 or we talk about fighter jets. These are ongoing projects, most of them. We have been talking about this, we have been buying about this, and there has been. We'll continue to do that. Some of them could be announced, some of them may not be announced, but these are all, even with the nuclear, the power nuclear projects, and many of those areas. So I think the real, I would say I would look at this particular summit one at the time when crucial things are happening in global geopolitics. What happens between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, and as Ambassador mentioned, both these countries are of certain consequence. You can't just say that these are two countries meeting in a situation. As in fact, as you mentioned, when three leaders in Tianjin in SCO meeting met, even just one photograph, I do not know what they talked. Maybe they just talked only 1 minute or 2 minutes at that point of time. That particular one photo was flashed everywhere, all across the Western media.
Yes, and the other was the car ride that President Putin had Prime Minister Modi join him for the car ride as well, and that conversation was much longer.
So it means that all the the visuals from Delhi between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, how do they meet, the kind of red carpet India is rolling out for him. I think that's giving a big, kind of message all across, and everybody is watching very carefully. This is more important because this is going to give certain direction to the uncertainties what we have at this point of time. India-Russia bilateral things which will continue to happen, our defense, energy, other things. But other things are also, I would say, equally important. Particularly when Americans and Russians are talking about Ukraine, and all the Europeans are so upset about the way things are going at the moment.
Right. Now, let's just, Master Puri, also look at how Washington, and namely Donald Trump, would be viewing this visit, because again, if we refer to what happened in Tianjin, it had made Donald Trump remarks sounding rather morose that US has lost India and Russia to darkest China. What now?
Gautam, let me ask a simple question. What would make us feel very good at the end of this summit in terms of an announcement? So if I take on from where Professor Sachdeva ended, if one of the things was that I have invited President Putin to come to India for the BRICS summit and he has said yes, will we not feel good? Somebody else will look at it in some other fashion or the other. But let's understand a little bit of this United States-Russia sort of relationships under Donald Trump, and away from the neocon theories which have always been there in various ways, etc. Mr. Trump and his advisors are trying their damnedest that there is some kind of a way forward on Ukraine. Why? And I'm saying this quite openly. In his view, he thinks that Russia is a major player in the world with whom the United States should do business. And I'm using business in a broader sense. He also thinks that's important for China. Now, I know where we come from. We've been grown up on slightly different sets of ideas, which has come about. So I am not sure about what actually his reactions will be. What may come out, maybe what officials sort of prompt him to say. Especially if there is something about this BRICS currency, etc., that will certainly result on a kind of rap on the knuckles. So I don't think all that will happen, etc. But if by some chance there is something that comes out which says that the Russians sort of understand that India has to buy less oil, he will say, oh, look, I did it. What a good idea. So look, there is this entire aspect of signaling what you are doing, etc. And in some senses, in some very important senses, a lot of what we are doing with the Russians, what we can do with them, and other aspects does or is impacted by what may or may not happen in the context of Ukraine, the Europeans and their ideas notwithstanding. The two players essentially being the United States and Russia, no more proxy wars. Now the people are actually sitting with each other. In fact, the sadder part of the story is that even the Ukrainians are not. So let's see what happens. I personally think that in our visit here, there will be most focus will be on bilateralism. And that's important, military, nuclear, and agriculture, all those particular things. One more thing, there's a growing migration, people level interaction between India and Russia. The Russians are opening up to more Indians coming there, including as professionals and working there, etc. This is a new but a very welcome development as far as we are concerned, and there's been a lot of action on that. The rest of it will be really both leaders sitting down together and making the other understand his or her compulsions, his or her possibilities, and therefore, and agreeing that, look, we all have to work within these particular sets of parameters that we are faced with. Let's try and see what we can do, because we have a time-tested and a relationship which has really benefited both of us. Let's plug this forward. It's good for us bilaterally, and we dare say, good for our positioning in the world.
Indeed, while we are standing by for the first visuals of the arrival of the Russian leader in New Delhi, Professor Sajdi, if I can come to you, we've spoken about, even Ambassador Kumar earlier on the broadcast spoke about post-Ukraine scenario for boosting India-Russia ties. In that context, in order to make the relationship future ready, as it were, what's the next big idea in the strategic partnership between the two countries? Remember, we are celebrating 25 years of the partnership and 15 years of the special and privileged strategic partnership. So what's the next big idea, as it were, in the India-Russia partnership going forward?
Well, the big ideas, in fact, we have been talking this for many years, but only thing is that we have not been able to operationalize it. One is that, as I said, how do we really identify certain areas which are really useful for India's infrastructure, India's modernization? Even in the infrastructure sector, I think the Russians do have many of those technologies. They have worked in the past. They can continue to be, I think, certain edge in some of those areas. So we haven't really been able to take full advantage of some of, even in fact, our Vande Bharat, you can see some of the wagons are coming, from Russia. So India's, the whole modernization of infrastructure, including railways, ports, etc., I think that there is a possibility that we can take some advantage of Russians. And also, how do we really, because if we say that, we are trying to build our own defense industry, which we are very keen under Make in India, our initiative, and the Russians are the only one who have really kind of worked with us to build some of those products, and BrahMos, and some of them are clear examples of this. So how do we really now link this, our defense, our nuclear, and our space technologies, which are again the traditional actually areas in which we have worked with the state-to-state sector in both these countries. Still, largely, it's still state-to-state, I would say, even now. But now we are opening many of these areas also to the private sector. So because of certain, I think things have happened simultaneously. When we opened these areas to private sector defense and some of those other areas, this was the time when Russia, for the last, not just only, after Ukraine war, even after Crimea, actually there have been certain sanctions against Russia. So for the last many years, the sanctions, because of sanctions, again, the Indian private sector has been relatively shy to, openly try to engage with some of the Russian entities, particularly many of those entities also state entities. So those are the areas in which, we have to find certain innovative solutions, certain innovative funding. And how do we really link? I mean, I've seen some of their work on the quantum technologies, which Russians are definitely better than some of our areas. So we can really work in those cutting edge technologies as well. But this can only happen not just only because of certain declarations. The kind of linkages, we used to have earlier with many of our research institutions and our students and universities and research institutions, in India and in Russia. I think most of those linkages have broken. There is very limited, of course. Now, in the last, I would say 3, 4 years, particularly after Ukraine war, some of those, there is a lot of interest now on the Russian side. They are willing to work because, earlier they were really working, trying to work more with the US and other places in the Europe. Since those, linkages have now broken, so they are looking towards India because they feel that some of those areas in which Russia and India has certain expertise in that as well. They are also working to some extent in China, but China, I'm told that they don't allow after a certain point, where China has edge in some of those technologies, they don't really cooperate with anyone, including with Russians. So we really have to now develop, as I was saying, based on our already existing strengths on the nuclear energy, space, and defense. Now, when we are expanding this, despite whatever people might say that we are diversifying from Russia, we will continue because as a part of our diversification process, our defense industry, of course, we have bought from Israel, from and from US and from France and others.
Certainly.
But our defense requirements also going to go up. So as a percentage, it may look actually slightly less, but overall volume and overall importance of Russia may not really decline as significant as many people would predict. So at least in the foreseeable future, these are the areas.
Okay.
How do we really
Sounds
link
good.
these technologies and our...
Sounds good. I mean, there's a lot to explore. I mean, we've been talking about how everybody needs critical minerals. India and Russia could look at that as well, apart from other frontier technology areas such as AI as well as robotics and even cybersecurity. You mentioned that as well. At this point, I'd like to thank Ambassador Puri for joining us. I'm told that this is the time that he had with us. So thank you for joining us this evening. We're awaiting the news of the arrival of the Russian president for this 2-day state visit this evening to Delhi. He's expected to land, or perhaps the time, of course, is past, Ramesh, of his that we were given that he will be landing. So let me get an update on that from Amitpal Singh, my colleague, who's been tracking developments at the Prime Minister's residence in terms of how things are going as far as this visit is concerned. Amrit.
Well, the Russian president was expected to land at 6:35, so there is a delay in his landing. But what we are hearing is that he's expected to land any time. So once the Russian president lands, as you've already updated the viewers, that he drives straight to the Prime Minister's residence, where Prime Minister Modi will be hosting him for a private dinner. Remember, when Prime Minister had visited Moscow, the Russian president had extended the same to Prime Minister Modi. He was hosted for a private Kremlin. Prime Minister Modi will be hosting Putin, where, of course, informally they'll be talking about the bilateral relations and also, setting the stage for tomorrow's formal talks, Gautam. Tomorrow is when the delegation level talks happen in a structured format. But today, over dinner, of course, the two leaders would, look at exchange their visions for where they want to take the relationship, given the critical juncture at which the Russian president is visiting India, the global scenario, the conflict in Europe, the tariffs war imposed by Donald Trump. That's affecting India and many other countries, targeting Russia specifically, oil purchases from India, from Russia dipping because of these sanctions. Is the way forward, how they can go around that. So all that will come up for discussions during the two leaders' dinner meeting, but the structured talks will take place tomorrow. Gautam.
Amrit, as you mentioned, the two leaders can be expected to discuss a whole gamut of issues, be it defense and security, energy cooperation, space, civil, nuclear energy. But do you think the focus primarily will be on trade and investment, the economy?
That's right. The focus, I think, of this visit would be three things. One, primarily trade. From an Indian point of view, how to attract more Russian investment into India, how Russia can be part of the India growth story, given the fact that you're a huge market. One. Second, the growth rate that you have, which the developed countries don't really have. So the opportunities that it presents, the unlocking of the potential that exists between the two sides. Point of view, how to correct the trade imbalances, which at the forum will be talked about. The Piyush Goyal also referred to it. How governments can step in to simplify processes for businesses, to make it easier for businesses to operate in.
Amrit, if you can just
look at
hold on for a moment. We are learning from our reporter colleague Tapas that the president's plane has landed in New Delhi. That's the news we are given to understand has happened in the last few minutes. Russian leader President Putin's plane has landed in New Delhi. But do carry on, Amrit.
President Putin has landed now, as Tapas tells us. He carries with him a huge posse of business tycoons. Some of them are already in Delhi. His cabinet ministers are in Delhi. 7 of his key cabinet ministers, including his defense minister, his agriculture minister, his economic development minister, Ramesh, his interior minister, the governor of the Central Bank of Russia, are here, clearly pointing to the fact that areas that will be up for discussion. Several MOUs or agreements expected to be signed after the delegation level talks could be in the fields of agriculture, food, health, cultural ties, more exchange of tourists in each other's countries, improving connectivity in the field of education, of course scaling up our defense partnership, as also the most important issue of trade and investment, getting more investment, Russian investment into India in the various sectors like agriculture, like automobiles, like machinery, labor mobility. That will be because Russia needs trained manpower, and India's got a huge talent pool. We are about 1.5 billion people, almost 1.4 billion people. So with a vast talent pool, India can, there are complementary territories to the relationship which can be explored, and the two sides would like to explore them and like to seal a deal to it. But more than anything else, more than the government-to-government agreements that happen tomorrow, it is the follow-up on that and making it easier for movement of people, creating an environment where migration, legal migration in Russia. So there are, it's not going to be a smooth flow. It is going to take time, but if there is an intent, I think the two sides during this visit will try and put that intent on paper and see that how processes can be made easier, be it in business, be it on mobility, be it on taking the defense partnership forward, or reducing that trade imbalance that both sides have been saying that needs to be corrected, Ramesh.
All right. Let me bring in Shubhendu as well. Shubhendu, we're told that the Russian president's plane has landed in the national capital. Pretty soon we'll get images of that as well to play out for all our viewers. But again, just in terms of how much anticipation is built into this visit, we return to the question of what more can we expect in terms of an addition to the different aspects of the ties which have already fairly enhanced between India and Russia when it comes to defense, to the maritime domain, to, of course, areas such as even nuclear energy. Do you feel that technology is something that has relatively not been in focus, and that is something that perhaps could emerge as something that might be a big ticket element this time around?
That's right, Gautam. Given the manner in which emerging technologies in particular, such as AI and other technologies have taken center stage, not just in geoeconomics, but geopolitics, And let's also see the manner in which India and Russia are complementary in taking forward, although not much has been done so far. But this is a good opportunity, this inflection point where India and Russia put in their best resources to become emerge as key players in the global supply chains of emerging technologies. Russia, we know, is home to rich deposits of critical rare earth minerals, which are central to developing technologies such as AI, semiconductors, and these are also technologies where India is investing significantly. Very dynamic ecosystems are coming up. In fact, the first Made in India chip is already out this year, and new semiconductor plants are coming up. Each of these plants, India is also, remember, one of the world's largest manufacturers of mobile phones. One of the products which the Commerce Minister hopes is going to be a part of India's export basket to Russia in a significant manner. So in that sense, we see that if you pull in the resources of trained manpower, of manufacturing ecosystem, and resources of the inputs such as rare earth material, the kind of possibilities that exist for India and Russia are phenomenal. So when the leaders seek to diversify the partnership from the traditional partnership in the domain of defense, in energy in the recent years, in agriculture, emerging technologies is going to be such a significant component of it. And it also connects very interestingly with the idea of trained workforce, of certain migration treaties that the two countries could come to terms with, where this whole ecosystem of emerging technologies can be co-developed both in India and Russia by the peoples of the two countries. So in that sense, significant possibilities, Gautam, in this domain.
Indeed, Shubhendu and Amrit, do stay on. Let me take a moment to welcome our next guest who is joining us on this special broadcast. Joining us is Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia. He is a former ambassador to Myanmar and Mexico and former High Commissioner to South Africa and Kenya. Ambassador, welcome to DD India. As President Putin's plane lands in Delhi, what are your expectations from the 23rd edition of the much anticipated India-Russia summit? Ambassador.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the expectations are fairly high for a number of reasons. This is the first visit in 4 years. This is a follow-up visit to our Prime Minister's visit to Russia last year. The context is very important. G20 summit has just concluded and important developments are taking place there. And the India-US relations, related tensions have not disappeared yet. And meanwhile, there is the European angle. So I would say expectations arise from the fact that it's an important geopolitical moment, President Putin's visit to India. And here, I think it's very important to remember that the visit will be important by the quantum of outcomes that it would produce, but also the messages it will send to the major power centers in the world, whether it is Washington, Beijing, European capitals, and the global south. I think the basic intention of the two leaders is to convey to the world that we are deepening our cooperation because this is in our mutual interest, but we want this to be beneficial to everybody. This is not a cooperation which is targeted against anyone, and India, obviously driven by the impulse towards strategic autonomy, remains open to equally close relations with other countries, other powers, other power centers. So fundamentally, I would say that it's a visit, the importance of which will go beyond India-Russia relationship.
Okay, beyond India-Russia relationship, that's something that we've been exploring with Professor Sachdeva as well. And in terms of how this could have a bearing on what's happening as far as the talks that are taking place primarily between the Americans, the Ukrainians and the Russians, of course not Russians and Ukrainians directly with each other, America being in the middle there. Do you feel that this is something that will also put an added focus on that process itself as to when will it come to a resolution?
is inevitably going to be on the agenda. This has become a global issue, global conflict, and this is remarkable that Indian and Russian leaders meet at a time when the negotiations are live, when they are actually going on in different capitals. India has played its role in trying to help find a solution to this problem, which has obviously deeply affected Europe and the rest of the world. But at the same time, I think we also need to remember that the two leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, are very close to each other. You know, it's not just the body language. I think they have met each other so many times. They've understood each other and, you know, sort of looked into each other's eyes and understood themselves very well. So inevitably, there would be a deep discussion on this, and India's advice, India's voice obviously will be conveyed by the Prime Minister, but it is a voice favoring peace, favoring negotiations, favoring solutions, and we very much hope that this process will be further reinforced and maybe, you know, by the end of the year or early next year, the world may see the end of this very painful conflict that has been going on since 2022.
Indeed, while we wait for the first visuals of the arrival of the Russian leader in New Delhi, Professor Sachdev, if I can bring you in back in the discussion. Looking at from a Russian perspective, Professor, how would you describe the Russian economy as it obtains today? How impacted do you think it is because of, one, the Ukraine conflict, and two, the Western sanctions? And does that give much scope for India-Russia trade to bloom or blossom in the days ahead?
Well, Russian economy actually has done much better than many expected in the West when the whole thing started. Obviously, there are serious problems because of, you have 15 rounds of sanctions from European Union and many other sanctions and restrictions and everything else. Now, despite that, I think it's continued to be an important producer and exporter of energy. And because of the Ukraine war, I think the initial 1 year, there were certain problems in the defense sector. And we were also worried that, whether we'll be also able to get some of our things on time. And there was also some delays, I guess, somewhere. But now I think they're working 2 times or 3 shifts actually. So production is actually much bigger now than what it used to be 3 years now. So in fact, I would think that if actually, Ukraine war, of course, would end at some point, and after that, their capacity to produce would be much bigger than what it was 3-4 years ago. So there's a much more scope for us to actually import and work together with Russians in the years to come. And another point which you were mentioning about bilaterally, about many of the issues about trade, about investment, technologies, migration. If you put together all of them, all these, many of those issues can be tackled if we work out, very useful, detailed, trade agreement between India and the Eurasian Economic Union.
Right.
In fact, I remember, when President Putin came here in 2000, I wrote a story at that point of time covering, when he signed strategic partnership here. And even at that point of time, we were talking about, some kind of trade agreement with Russia. Now, even in 2025, after 25 years, we are still talking about that we must have some kind of, we haven't even formally, or at least in any serious manner, we haven't even started negotiations on India-Eurasian Economic Union trade agreement. Now, since they are part of that custom union, the Union, so you also have some other economies, a part of this. But, so many of those issues can be actually work if we really believe that, Russia is going to be a very important partner. And if Russians also believe that India has capacities, as their leaders have been saying, that we must formalize some kind of agreement with them. We were cautious about those trade agreements for many years. But now, we have signed with, so many other countries, with Australia, with UAE, with EFTA, and we are also even negotiating with the US and the EU. So, I don't think there is one should be really so much cautious about, we should be really aggressive about, because immediately this will give you a lot of opportunities to many of our companies and also Russian companies. And also, it will also bring to the radar screen that, this is an area, there's a new agreement now, and, how we can really take advantage. This can really give a very good signal to businesses from both sides. So I think we should actually, it shouldn't really take very long. If we could actually sign agreement with the UK, just 2 or 3 years of negotiations, and with others actually even with less time, here I don't think there are many of those commodities where Indian industry should be really worried from Kazakhstan or from Russia signing from the Eurasian Economic Union. So there are so many other products in which they also should not be worried at all, because they are not really even producing; they are importing from others. And if they can import from India, there shouldn't be any problem in Eurasian Economic Union space. So we should, all those things which we are talking in bits and pieces, put in a comprehensive agreement and get things moving, and then let's see how things business really takes forward those initiatives by the governments. And the governments, of course, there are issues now of transactions, etc., and some of those could be even part of those agreements as well.
Amrit Pal, if I could come to you and ask you, how confident is the government here? I mean, it does have certain expectations, but how confident is it that under the prevailing environment, where you have sanctions against Russia from the US, the Europeans, that progress can be made on issues such as balancing trade, ensuring that Russia imports more from India, both in terms of goods and services, and the aspect of mobility is also, it gets a momentum.
We are saying, and our guest was saying, Professor Sachdev and Ambassador Bhatia, that there are complementary.
Right, let's take a moment to get you the latest visuals live from New Delhi of PM Modi receiving President Putin personally at New Delhi ahead of the 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit. These are the latest visuals coming to you from New Delhi. This is the news we are tracking here on DD India. PM Modi receiving President Putin personally at the New Delhi airport on the eve of the much-anticipated 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit.
Yes, there was speculation around as to who exactly will welcome President Putin when he lands in the national capital in Delhi for this visit, and now the veil of mystery has been lifted, and we have Prime Minister Modi himself, who has reached the airport there, the Parliament Technical Area, to receive President Putin. So this again underlines how important this visit is, and what kind of stature does it really have where India's foreign relations are concerned.
Indeed, and as we stay on these visuals, Ambassador Bhatia, would you like to come in and talk a bit over these visuals about the symbolism attached to all of it? Also, PM Modi breaking protocol to personally travel to the airport to receive his friend, President Vladimir Putin of Russia. Right, as we get you these latest visuals from New Delhi, Ambassador Bhatia, I meant to ask you about your thoughts on the symbolism attached to those visuals from New Delhi of Prime Minister Modi personally receiving President Putin at the airport ahead of the much anticipated summit.
Symbolism which is imbued with deep meaning.
Right.
In terms of protocol, the Prime Minister's presence at the airport is not required. But when he, in his own discretion, chooses to be present there, it shows 2 or 3 things. Number one, his very special personal regard for the foreign visitor. Second, his recognition of the importance of the India-Russia relationship. And third, the context of this visit. So I think from all 3 points of view, some of us were fairly optimistic and confident that Prime Minister would go. He has gone there, and it certainly opens the visit on a very good, very positive note.
Professor, would you like to come in as well on the symbolism of the Prime Minister receiving the Russian President at the New Delhi airport?
No, I think this is, as I was mentioning, the bilateral relations between India and Russia, of course, are very strong. And, many of those things we'll see tomorrow in all the declarations. But the way I think India has given a red carpet, and now Prime Minister personally going and receiving President Putin at the airport, this is the signal I think India is giving to all its other friends and partners, and also to the global community, that this particular relationship is very strong, and India gives a very very solid importance, or huge importance to this partnership, despite the fact that the Russia, Europeans, and many other from other countries, they do consider him a war criminal, and all kind of things, accusations have been made against President Putin. Of course, he was also given big welcome even when he went to the United States. So Russia continued to be a major player, and this also gives boost to the Russian standing, that he goes there, and the kind of welcome red carpet he receives in an important country like India, which is a kind of the voice of the global South, a very important country. So this actually work for both. This also provide a symbol to India's strategic autonomy, that we do have important partnership with others, but we cannot, because if they have certain problems with Russia, it doesn't mean that India would come under any kind of influence from other countries. So I think the major symbolism of this visit is also equally important than all the substantive talk which will happen tomorrow, or even today evening.
Indeed. Ambassador Bhatia, Professor Sajdev, do stay on. Why don't we get in our reporter colleagues also in on this discussion? If we can go across to our colleague Amrit Pal once again on this broadcast. Amrit, we saw those visuals of the Prime Minister personally receiving President Putin at the airport. What do you make of those visuals?
Well, it's a special gesture. The protocol doesn't require the Prime Minister to go and receive President Putin. Generally, a minister in waiting does that. But when Prime Minister breaks protocol and receives it, signifies or symbolizes the importance that he attaches to the visiting dignitary and his country. In fact, just before President Putin came landed in Delhi, he, in an interview in Moscow, said that about his car ride with Prime Minister Modi at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting a couple of months ago. He said it was just two friends traveling in a car, and it's a symbol of our friendship. So Prime Minister Modi, in the same spirit, setting aside protocol, laying a red carpet for President Putin, signifying the importance India attaches to this visit by President Putin, and by extension to the relationship with Russia, the Indo-Russian friendship and the relationship. This gesture speaks out about that. The private dinner, which will commence in a little while from now at where I am, outside the Prime Minister's residence. It will take place inside the Prime Minister's residence, where the Prime Minister is hosting him. This is adding a personal touch and setting the stage for tomorrow's talks, which happen in a structured manner, but as I was saying earlier, in an informal setting. The two principals or the two leaders will be talking about, exchanging where they want to take this relationship forward and the areas they would want to give a push to. And tomorrow, in a structured manner, the talks would follow, and also, agreements are expected to be signed in various areas to strengthen this relationship and take it to the next level. But this evening, Prime Minister Modi going and receiving President Putin has set the stage for talks in a very cordial and a warm manner, in which two countries put their trust together to take this relationship to the next level and deepen it. Ramesh?
Right. Now, just in terms of how rare is this honor? If I could also have you talk about it, Ambassador Bhatia, because we've seen in the past Prime Minister Modi rarely go out and receive world leaders in this manner at the airport when they land. I remember late Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was one of them. We've seen leaders from the Gulf nations being received in that manner. Also, former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. But what does this tell us about, again, the importance of the relationship as it has been in the past between India and Russia and its future?
If I may quickly add in, Ambassador and Professor, we are approaching the end of our time. So one quick comment from the both of you. Your concluding comments, your thoughts on the India-Russia summit. Starting with you, Ambassador Bhatia.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned, this summit is imbued with kind of multi-dimensional importance. It will have impact on global geopolitics. It certainly will affect regional configurations,
right.
And it is expected to advance the bilateral relationship. That is the heart of the matter.
Indeed.
I think if we can see that, there would be a great deal of satisfaction in India tomorrow.
Fair enough. Professor, you get the last word. Your thoughts on the much anticipated 23rd summit. I'm afraid we've lost that link with Professor. We'll try to connect with him if we can later on our broadcast. But Gautam, if we are approaching the end of our time, may we thank our guests for joining us. But before that, a quick thought again on the much anticipated summit. Gautam, if we run this news that we have for our viewers, PM Modi and President Putin relationship did not begin in 2014. Its roots go back a long way to, in fact, Prime Minister Modi when he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat and how he had met President Putin when he accompanied Prime Minister Vajpayee on that tour of his. Can we play those visuals again for our viewers of the Prime Minister Modi's relationship with Putin, which goes back several decades when he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, when he accompanied PM Vajpayee to Russia?
Okay, let's try and connect with Shubhendu at this stage. Shubhendu, clearly this is something that reflects the kind of relationship that the two leaders have developed through the course of time as well. Just remind our viewers as to how far do these two leaders go back?
Right, if you're just joining us, we're getting you some more visuals from the New Delhi airport of the two leaders, the two principals, PM Modi and President Putin, traveling in the same vehicle from the airport to their next engagement, which is a private, informal dinner conversation at the PM's official residence, which has now been renamed as Seva Tirth. PM Modi having a quick chat with President Putin as they leave the airport for their next engagement at the Prime Minister's official residence, Seva Tirth, for an informal private dinner on the eve of their structured dialogue, the 23rd India-Russia summit that will take place in New Delhi on Friday.
That is a reminder of the car ride that they had a little while ago as well. Intense conversation ensued there too. And he was asked about it, President Putin was asked about it in Moscow before he landed in Delhi about it, and he said it was just two friends talking. And it seems that these two friends have a lot to talk about here in Delhi as well.
Indeed.
Yes, Shubhendu.
Right, Gautam. So a shared car ride appears to be like a new yardstick to really look at close geopolitics and ties between leaders. And here, first, those historic visuals of Prime Minister Modi receiving President Putin at the airport, and then this car ride to Seva Tirth, that's Prime Minister Modi's residence, where an informal dinner, a very important engagement between two friends, two leaders, will take place. Gautam, about your question about how far these leaders go back. We've seen the two leaders leading the nations for more than a decade now, and more than that, at different leadership positions. They've engaged on different platforms. But I want to emphasize on the significance of these visuals of friendship and the warmth in particular, and the degree of comfort that we can see between the two leaders in those visuals at the airport, in the car ride. Sends out an important message for people both in Russia and India, that the time-tested friendship that we've been talking about is alive and kicking, as it were, with the great possibilities and excitement to take it forward. It also, I think, it would be very significant visual for the leaders in the West to be looking at. Sends out an important message that as mindful India is of the changing geopolitics, of the concerns of its partners in the West, it will not be arm-twisted or guided into its friendships and its ties with friendly countries, particularly with Russia. So Prime Minister Modi's presence at the airport, this car ride and the first, the informal dinner that follow is really very, very significant in sort of energizing the kind of momentum that we've been talking about, that India and Russia need to create a roadmap for the future. I think it has already begun with those visuals.
Yes, definitely. Now, Prime Minister Modi and President Putin's relationship, as we were mentioning, did not begin in 2014 when Prime Minister Modi became the nation's leader for the first time. Its roots go back to 2001 when Prime Minister Modi was Gujarat's Chief Minister, and he met the Russian President Vladimir Putin there in Moscow. These are some of the photographs from Moscow in 2001 when the then Chief Minister of Gujarat had accompanied then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee to Russia.
And let's tell you some more about President Putin, the man himself. Rising from within the ranks of Russia's intelligence corridors, Vladimir Putin emerged from the post-Soviet transition to become the undisputed leader of Russia for over 2 decades. Watch this special report.
For nearly 25 years, one man has stood at the center of Russian power, Vladimir Putin. His story doesn't begin with power. It began in a cramped community apartment in post-war Leningrad. Born on October 7, 1952, he describes his childhood as ordinary. His father was a war veteran turned factory foreman. His mother, Maria, he remembers as gentle, modest, always keeping the family running with simple food and Sunday baking. He once admitted that as a schoolboy, he was more of a hooligan than a model student. But one teacher saw something early: potential, energy, and character. That spark eventually pushed him to study law and then chase the dream of joining the KGB, the main intelligence agency of the Soviet Union. He asked how to get in and was told, first, get a degree. He did. And by 1985, he was serving in East Germany, eventually becoming a lieutenant colonel. By then, he had a family. Putin married in 1983 and has 2 daughters. His political journey began back home in St. Petersburg, handling foreign economic relations. This is where his India connection first formed through rupee debt deals and, as colleagues recall, a growing liking for Indian cuisine. Then came Moscow and a fast rise. In a Russia struggling with political chaos, war in Chechnya and economic instability, Putin became head of the Federal Security Service, then Prime Minister, and finally on December 31st, 1999, acting President. He won the 2000 and 2004 elections, promising order, stronger pensions, and industrial revival. When term limits forced him out in 2008, he switched roles, becoming the Prime Minister of the country. During this period, the presidential term was extended to 6 years. Putin returned to the presidency in 2012 and again in 2018. His support, according to state polling, surged especially after the 2014 takeover of Crimea. Then came February 2022, when Putin announced what he called a special military operation in Ukraine. Despite Western sanctions, Russia's internal polling still claims high approval for his move. Through these decades, Putin has worked hard to project one consistent theme: stability through big state projects, social support, and long term national plans. And through all of this, India stayed on his radar. He once argued that Russian leaders underestimated India's importance. His first presidential visit led to a strategic partnership with Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, now evolved into what both sides call a special and privileged strategic partnership.
And there will be efforts to build upon that special and strategic partnership through the course of these 2 days as well that President Putin is in Delhi. He has landed just a short while back, received a breaking protocol by Prime Minister Modi, and the two then got on the same vehicle to head off to the Prime Minister's residence for a private dinner.
Indeed, and that's a wrap on this special broadcast. But news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching.